A few years ago, there was a blockbuster film in China called The Captain, which was based on a true story. During the flight of Sichuan Airlines Flight 3U8633 from Chongqing to Lhasa, the aircraft experienced an incident in which the windshield shattered. Fortunately, the pilot, who was a former Air Force pilot, remained calm and managed to safely land the plane at Chengdu Shuangliu International Airport even though the front windshield had completely disappeared. In the movie, when the incident occurred, 3U863 flew to the edge of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau, flying at an altitude of 9,800 meters, where the outside temperature was extremely low. After the windshield shattered, the co-pilot was half sucked out of the window, hovering between life and death. From the movie, the audience could feel the terrifying experience of flying over Tibet. However, in reality, most flights cannot directly fly over Tibet. Otherwise, the events portrayed in the movie might happen every day. This is because Tibet has always been considered an airspace restricted zone. Although not all planes are prohibited from flying over it, most will choose to detour. So, what secrets does Tibet hold that would make airplanes prefer to avoid it even if it means taking a longer route? From the geographic and climatic conditions of Tibet, there are several reasons, and let's check them out in today's video. Why can't airplanes fly over Tibet? Firstly, the altitude and complex terrain of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau. The Qinghai-Tibet Plateau is the highest inland plateau in China and even in the world. Tibet is located in the southwest of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau and is the main part of the plateau, with an average altitude of more than 4,000 meters. The flight altitude of civil aircraft is usually between 7,000 and 12,600 meters, which is at the top of the troposphere and the bottom of the stratosphere. This altitude range has good visibility, high air quality with low impurities, little noise pollution, and minimal bird interference, and is stable enough for aircraft to travel smoothly. However, Tibet's high altitude, such as the Himalayan mountainous area in southern Tibet, is full of tall mountains with an average altitude of 6,000 meters. Apart from Mount Everest, many mountain peaks reach a height of 7,000 meters. Flying over this area is very risky, as there is a high chance of the plane crashing into the mountains. Some business jets can reach an altitude of 15,000 meters to reduce the risk of hitting the mountains, but these are rare. During World War II, Tibet had a must-pass air route for transporting supplies called the Camel Route, which was located on the southern foothills of the Himalayas and was shaped like a mountain pass between two humps of a camel. This route was over 800 kilometers long, with the highest altitude reaching nearly 7,000 meters, making it an extremely difficult flying challenge. At that time, only American military transport planes such as C-46 and C-47 could pass through the Camel Route. Other planes did not have enough climbing height and were impossible to pass. Even with U.S. military transport planes, accidents of crashing into the mountains might happen if the pilot skills were not enough, or when the weather was bad. Although several decades have passed and airplanes have become more advanced, and pilots have greatly improved their skills, it still does not mean that the airspace over Tibet can be conquered. This is because the terrain here is complex, with many mountains, and if the location of the peaks is not judged correctly, it is still possible to collide with them. Civilian aircraft do not need to take the risk of colliding with mountains in order to take a shorter route, so it is better to detour even if it is farther away to avoid the high peaks. During the flight, it is normal for an airplane to encounter an emergency landing. However, if an accident occurs in the airspace over Tibet, there are only mountains below, and there is no place to land. Therefore, Tibet has been a no-fly zone for civilian aircraft for a long time. Secondly, the climate is not suitable. People who have been to Tibet for tourism know that although the sunshine is good on the plateau, due to the influence of the mountainous terrain and atmospheric circulation, Tibet is not only cold, but also has a diverse climate. At the altitude at which the aircraft is flying, the temperature can drop to -40 degrees Celsius. Therefore, freezing may occur in the high altitude of several thousand meters. First of all, the airplane may freeze. Once the fuel freezes, the airplane will quickly lose power and fall. Even if the fuel is thawed and the engine continues to work, it will collide with the mountains due to the low altitude after falling to a certain height. In addition to fuel, the aircraft's intake may also freeze. In 2017, an Eastern Airlines passenger plane flying from Sydney to Shanghai had the left engine's intake duct freeze, causing serious damage to the engine, and had to return immediately. Although the accident did not cause casualties, the fairing and skin were torn apart, and if the crew reacted slower, it could have resulted in a disastrous crash. The danger of icing, coupled with the problem of thin air, will also cause insufficient lift of the aircraft. Under normal circumstances, a layer of ice of only 1 to 2 millimeters can reduce the lift of the aircraft by 30%. If the icing is more severe, it can directly form ice columns on the wings, which may damage the engine, scrape the fuselage, and so on. The worst case is engine failure, causing the airplane to fall from an altitude of 10,000 meters. Moreover, the airflow over Tibet is turbulent, and airplanes are prone to turbulence. This is actually easy to understand. Residents living on high floors in flat areas will feel a strong wind, let alone a continuous several thousand-meter high mountain, which will cause more turbulent airflow. Although turbulence is common for airplanes, if the amplitude of the turbulence is too large, it will increase the probability of injury to passengers in the cabin. More seriously, turbulent airflow will affect communication. This is because the medium for transmitting electromagnetic waves is unstable, and if the impact lasts too long, the airplane will lose contact with the ground and face greater risks. If unfortunately, the airplane is caught in the airflow and cannot be controlled, there is a possibility of colliding with mountains. The third danger is that noise may trigger an avalanche. Tibet has many snowy mountains with magnificent views, but the risk factor is also high. The most terrifying danger is undoubtedly avalanches. The steep slope of the mountain, the loose snow cover, and the high air vibration can all trigger avalanche phenomena. Therefore, those who climb snowy mountains are all aware of one rule, which is not to shout loudly, so as to avoid sound waves spreading rapidly and causing air vibration. This statement is not exaggerated. Even if you have not climbed snowy mountains, you should know that the echo of a loud shout in the mountains is very strong. Compared with human voices, the noise generated by airplane flight is even harder to bear. Friends living near an airport should have a deep experience of this. When a plane lands and passes over their rooftop, even covering their ears tightly cannot block the roar of the plane. The noise of airplanes mainly comes from two sources: the sound of the engines and the sound of the aircraft rapidly rubbing against the air. When the two noises are combined, they may shake loose the snow on a mountain. In Tibet, the mountains are high, and if an airplane flies over from above, the distance between the two is not far, and the strong noise may trigger many avalanches. Avalanches not only threaten human safety but also cause damage to the ecology. The rolling snow weighs several tons, and with the acceleration provided by the steep mountain slope, its destructive power is immeasurable. Plants and buildings at the foot of the mountain will be instantly buried. Rescue operations for such disasters are no less challenging than those for landslides and mudslides. Therefore, considering all the reasons mentioned above, it is better for airplanes to avoid Tibet. Of course, despite all these difficulties, Lhasa Airport is still operating normally, and there are direct flights to Lhasa from other cities in China. However, the planes on these flights are different from those on the plain routes. They are called plateau planes, and their engine thrust is much greater than that of the plain planes. Despite the modifications, this route remains the bumpiest in the country, and strong psychological resilience is needed to endure it. So, if you come to China for tourism, would you dare to take this flight? Well, thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions, just leave them in the comments section. We'll come back as soon as possible and check them, and then we'll give feedback. See you next time.